for the coaches was really good to see how they do what we want, and so the idea how we want to play football, you can see there's something, there's a progress and development, and this is nice to see.
And I know that there's so much made of Barcelona's identity and style. It's iconic, but so is yours, and everyone talks about the Gegenpress and which one's even more enjoyable to watch. How do you marry the two? Are you even trying to do that, or do you have already the specific style of how you want this Barcelona to play?
I think we have to improve a lot. So in some situation in the match, so first half or second half, so we are too deep. So we have no pressure on the ball, and this is what we work on. And but at all, I'm really happy with that what they are doing and they are playing.
I always say that Barcelona's youth are always ready for any occasion. It's crazy to think how much they are experienced. How much do you enjoy working with them?
No, it's great. Everyone. Also the experienced players. They are really professional players, and you can see the spirit of the youth. It's unbelievable because they know in the spaces, in the position where they are, how to play, how combine it, and this is nice to see.
Frank Leboeuf joins us as we reflect on that game. Shaka, over 80,000 in attendance. Despite the weather, it was a great contest. And if you're a Barcelona fan, you think back to ahead of the Manchester City game. We were thinking, wow, look at all the players they're missing out on. Yet they go and put in a good performance against City. They go and beat Real Madrid last night. For Barcelona, there are a lot of positives from this pre-season.
A lot. And first of all, I thought it was a great contest yesterday. Credit to Real Madrid. Listen, it's a classico, in inverted commas. As pre-season games go, I thought they were absolutely fantastic. But you mentioned it, and going back to before that City game, I was thinking, listen, if Barca could come away from here losing 5 or 6, and it would be a total embarrassment, and what an awful start for Hansi Flick. But then we see the two performances. And on the one hand, you want to say, don't get overly excited. It's still pre-season. Nothing matters at this point. But given all the changes and everything that's been going on at Barcelona for the last couple of seasons, for the last few months, what you saw in both those performances is real reason for encouragement. I thought you can see what Hansi Flick is trying to get this team, how he's trying to get them to play, not just the high pressing, but how wide they make the pitch and how difficult it is for opponents, even an understrength Real Madrid, to defend against. And you saw that in both games against City and Real. And while they still have a lot of players to come in, and Alexis is talking about Barcelona's foundations around style of play, the one thing that Barcelona cannot get away from is their reliance on youth. And those players coming through the academy, the performances that we've seen now in 2 games, when we had no idea what to expect, gives everybody who is of a Barcelona persuasion real reason to believe. Now, I'm not going to say that this team can eclipse Real Madrid, particularly Real Madrid, at their best with all their new signings, which I'm sure we'll get to. But given what we've seen, and I know Barca won the title a couple of seasons ago, but given what we've seen particularly to start last season, this is some improvement on it.
What's interesting, Don, and we heard Robert Lewandowski talk about Xavi's reign. Xavi is so ingrained with everything Barcelona. You know, it bleeds kind of that Barca DNA. Yep. Hansi Flick, as an outsider, comes in and kind of almost brings a completely different element to it. And we weren't sure whether that's going to work. But it seems like, disciplinary-wise, trying to get the best out of these players, that maybe he can connect with them slightly different than Xavi did. Do you get that as a coach coming in? Like, have you worked with coaches who have kind of been with the club forever and others that have come in from the outside?
I think that's a good point that you make, because Xavi was so ingrained in the DNA of Barcelona and only wanted to play one way because that's what he knew as a player. So why wouldn't you try and transform that at the same club? Because it worked for a lot of years, where now you think Hansi Flick might come in, might be a little bit different, might be more defensive. So what you saw in every single game, by the way, credit to all the teams because they've been competitive in every single game that we've watched. What I think you're seeing from Barca, especially with all their problems off the pitch in terms of financial problems, it must be great for the hierarchy and even Hansi Flick, where you're looking at some good young players who have now not forced their way into the squad, but are getting a little bit closer. And at any given time, if Hansi Flick's got injured to experienced players, he can call on the youth players who have performed in this sort of mini tournament in the games that they played and thought, well, they're not at the depth. So you're starting to see some good young players coming through. They're not all going to play. It would be foolish to try and sit here and suggest that they're all going to play, especially as Shaka said, when you see all the big guns of Real Madrid when they set up their teams. But Hansi Flick has got now the experienced players like Lewandowski and like Gundogan, etc., that can try and help these young players along.
Frank, do you get that from what Lewandowski said, that maybe Xavi was a little too close to the club, and someone like Hansi Flick coming in doesn't have that same connection, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing?
Yeah, it's true that maybe being too much linked to people working at the club can be an issue in your freedom, in the way that you want to work, and because you sentimentally too attached to the club as well, can be hard sometimes when you want to say something that you know won't please the board, the hierarchy, maybe also the fans, and I don't even say about the players, but. It might be easier when you come from outside to express what you exactly think, especially when you're new and you've been chosen and you have the freedom to say what you really believe would be better for the club. When you are a kid of the club that you played for, you have hard time to criticize the way it works. So it's why maybe Xavi had his hand maybe tight a little bit in that matter.
In years like this, where you've got the international tournaments, those players who've represented their countries and have gone deep in the tournament are still away, still waiting for them to come back, and that provides opportunities for young players who maybe wouldn't have ordinarily featured, certainly not this heavily, in preseason games. You get that opportunity and you take it. And now all you can do is ask to build on that. I think I speak for every single player. The first time they step on the field, nobody's quite sure.
Right.
And we've all had those discussions. We've all seen those players who are absolutely fantastic through every single age group in the academy, and then for some reason, it just doesn't come together for the first
Is
time.
it a mental thing? Is it an ability thing? Or is it individual?
Confidence, experience?
It's a number of different things. But similarly, to that point, we've also had players who've been okay through academies. And then all of a sudden, get to the first team, and for some reason, it just clicks. You know, and whether it's age of their physicality, age of their psychology, just how they're able to just dismiss any errors. You know, sometimes these young players who are so fantastic through the academy are just used to being so much better than everybody else. They're used to things going their way. Right. And when all of a sudden you're not better than the wing back you're up against, when you can't just run by him as easily as that, or he's far more experienced and can take up a position, and you're struggling to figure out what to do, all of a sudden, you know, things start to implode. Again, while you have other players who just, it just clicks at that point when they're introduced. So it's a really inexact science. But to your point, and specifically Paul Victor, good start, all you can do, or that's all you can hope for, right, and build on that.
Frank, as a teammate, can you smell it in a player, whether or not they can make that step up?
I would say yes, not because you only had training session, but when you sometimes, play a friendly game like it happened yesterday for Barcelona, and you see a player playing, and I can give the example of John Terry. He was very young, and he played, and we saw him training, we saw him having friendly games with us, the mentality and everything. You say, whoa, something special is coming on, and that guy is going to be soon somebody very strong. Of course, you have to progress and to make him progressing in a certain way, because they're raw and they make mistakes. They rush maybe into something where they have to calm down, especially when you're a defender, also when you're a striker. But at some point you feel that the player is going to be special, that you have somebody who's going to turn the things in a positive way.
Yeah, I was just thinking when Shaka was talking there, and without being crude, this is big boys football now.
Yes.
It's men's football now. You're stepping into an arena where you're playing against men. Yep. Seasoned professionals. Guys that have got 500 games under their belt. Guys that have been around the block. So when you're progressing through the academies, as Frank said and Shaka said, you can smell it because you see the talent. It's there.
What is it, Don, in particular that you see, like that they can go toe to toe with the big?
Well, you see it beforehand. Before they get in the first team, you see it because they're the best player in that age group.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that happens these days. I think it still does, but the best players at 16, 17 play above their age group.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 17-year-old who's too good for the 17s, he'll play in the 19s.
Well, Lamine Yamal's playing for the first
Well, that's the best example of all. But I mean, that's a great example when you spot a player, and players like Frank and Shaka and myself who have been there, and you've seen the Rio Ferdinands coming through, the Frank Lampard's coming through. I've been there at Liverpool, and Robbie Fowler was coming through. You can see it a mile off. What you don't know is how they're going to do when they get into big boys football, into men's football. That's the unknown. And then that's where you see, yeah, they can handle it.
And also to add to that, and you use Lamine Yamal as an example. Can you imagine the first time he goes out, you know, the kind of social pressures?
What do you mean, Shaq?
What's he going out with?
What do you mean?
I just mean that to stay at the top, it takes a certain... I'm getting really...
He's not allowed anywhere.
You have brought this completely on yourself.
I did, yes, I did. My point being that when you break into the first team,
yes,
all of a sudden there's a bigger spotlight on you, even from the friends that you grew up with. And those who can resist that spotlight fear best.
To that point, he played a blinder, actually, in his post-match interview. Do you see it?
Seen it.
He was asked, you know, how's pre-season been? It's been obviously it's been good, but I miss my girlfriend. I can't wait to get...
You see,
well done, pal.
Straight out of the Don Hutchison.
Like, you kind of think, well, what do we take away from Real Madrid for this? You don't really take it. Like, Carlo Ancelotti said, I just fitness. That's all I care about at the moment. That's kind of all we got to say.
Right now, Thibaut Courtois, and I know he came back before the end of last season, but again, getting through pre-season, gets 90 minutes under his belt. Endrick, I thought, despite the condition, you start to see what he can do. We know what Arda Güler can do. Vinicius Jr. comes off the bench, gets a few minutes. From a Real Madrid perspective, it's just about players getting minutes and, most importantly, not getting injured.
Militao, for one.
Militao, correct. And Real Madrid can, as of right now, can see that. A lot of our players got minutes. As of right now, no injuries to report. This is a great preseason as far as we're concerned.